Welcome back to the channel, everyone, and to our next review of the latest X-Men 97 episode, Episode 8, Tolerance is Extinction, Part 1. This episode is the beginning of the final conflict for the X-Men and almost all of the enemies they have encountered this season. I was not sure how I felt about this episode in terms of quality after watching it the first time. I was intrigued by the ideas within the episode, but I think there was a lot of exposition in the first 10 to 12 minutes before the episode started to show instead of tell. However, once the episode ended, I understood, and knowing how they were setting up this three-part finale on a second viewing, Episode 8 becomes a great start to what should be a great season finale. And if you wanted cameos, this is your episode, because we got some I never thought we would. So let's get into it. And spoiler warning in effect for anyone who has not yet seen this episode or is unfamiliar with the source materials it is drawing from, runs like the Messiah Complex, Operation Zero Tolerance, the Cassandra Nova saga, and even elements of Avengers vs. X-Men. The episode's title alone tells us a lot, and we've already talked about in previous videos about the ongoing mental toll this season must be having on the X-Men. They have done a lot of things that can be seen as out of character. Rogue going rogue and attempting to eliminate Trask, Beast losing his patience and tolerance for outsiders, Scott unable to develop into the leader that he should be because of trauma and depression, Magneto swallowing his instincts and capitulating to the UN, and there continues to be this underlying simmering anger and resentment growing within the team. Professor X's sabbatical into space has left more of a void than what even his top children could have imagined. This is not helped with the arrival of Cable in episode 7. Now, before I go any further, I have to comment on the message of this episode, and maybe the message of the entire series. I know that these shows were produced months ago. However, episode 8 leans heavily into the lore of the Nazis and the horrific things they thought and did. I cannot help seeing a parallel to the events of today, especially in the past 2 months. I'm not telling anyone here how or what to think. We're all intelligent and capable of forming our own opinions. However, the similarities to what the show is leaning into and what we see on the news every day is striking. Okay, enough of that. Our episode opens with Cable, Scott, and Jean trying to figure out their family dynamic. Scott just does not know how to be a father, and Cable does not know how to be a son. There's just no connection there. But before Scott gets a chance to salvage this relationship, we cut to Cable giving us basically everything we need to know in terms of Bastion's future plans and what happens to all the mutants. Now, if you look closely at the holograms Cable is using, there is a timeline, much like we see at the TVA in Loki, with alternate timelines branching off, and we also get Beast mentioning Camartage and their belief in pivotal points in time that are universal across the multiverse and cannot be altered, like the attack on Genosha. If you've not been paying attention, Bastion has been peppered into this series all along. We pointed out his picture on Forge's refrigerator in New Mexico. Anytime we see purple flames, it is a symbol of Bastion being present. And later, we will see how Madeline was having visions of Bastion as early as the first episode. And I'm sure there are more inserts of him in other episodes, so it'll be fun to go back and look and see where and when he shows up. Cable explains that because of Genosha, Bastion receives government funding and support, hence why we see Val Cooper with him later in the episode, and to build his Prime Sentinel program and the OZT, Operation Zero Tolerance. This leads to humans building a utopia and enslaving the mutants that survive in a 300-year war. Cable explains that he has a lead on Bastion's possible whereabouts, and this is where Jean, Cable, and Scott break off to go to investigate. But before this happens, the footage of Charles Xavier and the Shi'ar Empire is broadcast, causing a lot of consternation in the public about the X-Men faking Charles's death to garner sympathy, and that the X-Men may be suspect in Guy Ritchie's murder in Mexico City. It is clear that part of Bastion's plan is to not only eliminate the mutant threat, but to also destroy any goodwill that may exist for the X-Men, making them the villains. A tactic used by many dictators throughout history to demonize a segment of the population as part of taking absolute control. We then cut to another Jubilee and Sunspot scene, and yes, I'm still very critical of Jubilee, and even more so now. She argues with Roberto's mother, who seems to only have good intentions towards the mutants, and Jubilee gets angry and forces Roberto to bring her shopping, basically demanding that he spend his money on her to make her feel better. Look, just my opinion, but at this point, Jubilee is just a horrible person, and I cannot stand her character. What is notable about this scene is the news that is playing. Yes, that is William Stryker on the TV, being just as belligerent and bombastic about opposing mutants as you would expect him to be. We then get to see Rogue, who is in a coma, and Jean trying to connect with her telepathically. I love that Nightcrawler is in this scene as the voice of Serenity, comforting Jean over Madeline, Nathan, her false memories, and everything else she is dealing with emotionally. Nightcrawler's ability to put things into perspective, especially calling back to his own mother, Mystique, is poignant and serves to honor the original source material, and I thought this was great writing and should be noted for being so. We then get to Val and Mr. Sinister, and this is the first look at Magneto. Strung up on an X, which is historically accurate for crucifixions, most were on X's, not crosses like Christian lore would have you believe. And, for some reason, Magneto is almost naked. Maybe a humiliation tactic from Bastion and Sinister, and Val realizes that Magneto's past with the Nazis is happening all over again. It was normal, everyday citizens that allowed it to happen, just like the genocide of Genosha. Val compares Sinister to Dr. Mengele, the Nazi science officer that performed some of the most torturous experiments on Jewish prisoners one could imagine, and I would not mention them here because they were the stuff of the worst kinds of nightmares. But Magneto refuses to speak, and we get a clear shot of his internment number from when he was taken by the Nazis as a child. Again, there is a lot of symmetry to pre-World War II Germany, what is going on today in real life, and the events of the series. It's pretty heavy stuff when you really start to sit down and analyze it. Next up is the Blackbird touching down at Bastion's childhood home. Cable, Scott, and Jean are introduced to Bastion's mother, and through investigation, Jean is able to surmise that Bastion is the ultimate evolution of Master Mold, Nimrod, and the Sentinels overall through a cosmic infection, basically the essence of Nimrod, into his father before conceiving Bastion with his wife. We get a shot of Jean holding a child's drawing in crayon, and this is the same drawing that Madeline saw in her vision in episode 1. Again, great job to the writers for trying to tie all of these loose threads together. Now, let me just stop for a second, because I've been both critical and supportive of the writing, and I think mostly supportive. I did not like episode 4 very much, but if this is the writing that Bo DeMeo produced for this season and Marvel still fired him, I have to think that this was not a performance issue. There must have been something else at play, because give credit where it is due. Like the guy, don't like the guy, he can write. And let me know what you think in the comments if you agree with that or not. I'm curious to know your perspective. Back to the show. Finally, we get our villains, Mr. Sinister, Val Cooper, and Bastion. They're having a conference with others, and there's a sense of dissension amongst the group over how Bastion is operating without transparency. Here we get some of the cameos I never thought we would. Dr. Doom and Zemo appear on monitors and give their opinions over Genosha and their complicity in the attack. So yeah, Dr. Doom has been in the shadows all along. I'm sure most of those watching this episode were in full fanboy and fangirl mode when this happened. Bastion's experiments are then revealed. We see how he is creating Prime Sentinels through the conscription of average humans, and we get another parallel to real-world events, the idea of being replaced. Definite reference to artificial intelligence. So there is a lot of anger and a lot of fear driving Bastion's thought process, but Val begins to question Bastion more and more. She is beginning to understand that she is participating in something truly terrible. Now here's where the episode kicks into overdrive. We get back to Jean, Cable, and Scott. Bastion's mother shows them his best painting, titled The Final Dream. And again, I can't help but connect it to the final solution, the Nazis' term for exterminating the Jews. There is so much Nazi referencing in this series and in this episode especially that whatever is coming in episode 9 and 10 is shaping up to be huge. Now Bastion's mother is of course a Prime Sentinel. That's how evil Bastion is. He experimented on his own mother and let the fighting begin. All of our heroes are now put into danger, no matter where they are. Jubilee and Roberto in the mall are attacked by Prime Sentinel. Wolverine, Nightcrawler, Morph, and Beast are attacked in the mansion by Prime Sentinels. And we get a cool cameo of Juggernaut here as Morph uses that form to fight. And we get Nightcrawler with his swords, and he is just a standout in this episode in terms of fantastic animation and fight choreography. It may be my favorite sequence of the series next to Gambit's final fight in episode 5. Now, Jean, Cable, and Scott are attacked by a whole town full of Prime Sentinels, and so now there are Prime Sentinels activated everywhere, and no matter who you are, the X-Men are outnumbered and fighting a losing battle. We then cut to Jubilee and Sunspot being captured by the Prime Sentinels. It seems the Sentinels are not supposed to kill the mutants, especially in front of ordinary citizens, making the X-Men look like criminals and the Sentinels as the good guys. We then learn that Val has released Magneto. She sees clearly how history is repeating itself, but now Val is Bastion's prisoner. After his release, Magneto goes to the northern magnetic pole to enhance his power, and he basically goes into God mode, releasing EMP energy over the entire planet. And here is where we get some of our other holy crap cameos. Yes, we get Spider-Man, we get Silver Samurai, and we get Omega Red. Add these to the Hulk Easter egg and Captain America cameo in episode 7, and you have to wonder if they are seeding future storylines. happens. Magneto's power is able to deactivate all the Prime Sentinels, and just as he is back, and I mean that in terms of his character and his motivation, I do not think we're going to get the nice Magneto back. We are going to get the Magneto back that is going to do everything possible to protect his mutant family. And this was the perfect moment to bring back Professor X as he crash lands at the mansion. The final scene is Professor X calling out to all of his X-Men to come to him. And we get a shot of Beast, Jean, Cyclops, and Storm. So yes, we are going to get Storm back finally, and I really can't wait to see that. Overall, after a couple of viewings, I really came to appreciate this episode as the beginning of something grand. Parts 2 and 3, I think, are going to be something special to see. Marvel and Disney have been getting a lot of criticism over their live-action films over the past couple of years, and a lot of that criticism is completely valid. But this series is something different. I always urge my viewers, and I always urge you, to give credit where credit is due. This, for me, has been one of the best creative offerings from Marvel in the past 3 or 4 years. And that's what I think. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. What did you think of episode 8? How about the series overall? And do you think Bo DeMeo should be brought back to continue writing? And was it a mistake to fire him in the first place? As always, thank you for watching, and click on the thumbnails for my retro comic review of Batman issue number 251 and my playlist of all my other comic book recaps. I'm still your reluctant gringo from south of the border. Salute and a huevo.